Happy Halloween. I am Red Lagoe, and today I'm going to read a little bit from Impulses of a Necrotic Heart. This is a short story collection, and the story that I'm going to read is Tangerine Sky. I originally wrote this story for the anthology called Chromophobia, which is edited by Sarah Tatlinger. The memory of a tangerine sky lived rent-free in Sylvia Ramsey's head, and she needed to let it go. Her therapist had suggested releasing the image by painting it. Now, a blank canvas stood between Sylvia and her mental health. Painting as a hobby vanished into the past because she feared her reds and yellows would accidentally mix on the palette, dredging up the color orange and the haunting image from 16 years ago. Arms hanging limp by her side, Sylvia stared into the stretched canvas, attempting to imagine that sky, but her stomach churned as if she'd ingested a bucketful of cadmium orange acrylics. For too many years this color tormented her. It was time to reclaim it. Sylvia closed her eyes. The 20 by 16-inch canvas burned into her retinas, displayed on the back of her eyelids. A rectangle of possibilities. Could she paint those tangerine skies, dappled with fiery clouds as the sun dipped into the horizon? The black pier had cut across the water, speckled with tiny people. A little girl, 12 years old, spinning in the foreground as a silhouette, forever trapped against that hideous orange prison. Sylvia opened her eyes. The memory of her little sister came to life as a phantom upon canvas. She should paint it. She needed to paint it. To reclaim the color, to memorialize her sister in the last moment she was ever seen. It was the moment that forced Sylvia to grow up. She had only been 15, but if she were watching her sister more closely, Hannah would still be with her. Another silhouette crept into the depiction in her mind. He took Hannah in his grip and stole her. Hannah's ponytail whipped to the side, but she left without a fight. She was so far away. Sylvia couldn't run fast enough against the tide of boardwalk strollers and cyclists. The tangerine sky devoured Hannah's small silhouette forever. After Hannah was taken, that hideous monstrosity of a color in the sky appeared everywhere. During questioning, an officer peeled a mandarin at his desk nearby. Her eyes gravitated to the color of the fruit against the white cinder block wall as his nubby fingers dug into the peel. That day she'd hated the officer who casually thought of food during her tragedy. His sticky fingers were wet with blood-orange injustice, clinging to idle hands. Sylvia gave up oranges and carrots. She rejected everything orange. The pumpkin-toned walls of her family kitchen suffocated her so many times her parents had to repaint them blue. She avoided orange like it was a monster that could swallow up everything she loved. Not that she allowed herself to love anything anymore. Her job came first. The rage which fueled her was all there was to live for. After school, she'd studied criminal justice and then became a police officer, doing grunt work for years until she finally made detective. That's all she ever wanted since August 18th, 16 years ago. To do what the sticky, mandarin-eating man never accomplished. Sylvia would bring down child trafficking rings. She'd hunt them and scour those stains from humanity. In some small way, she'd always hoped to find her sister. But she'd come to terms with the reality years ago. Painting could aid with processing those imprisoned emotions, spew the bottled anger. A knock at her door broke her focus from the canvas. Her chest tightened, breath trapped beneath the weight of revelation. Go away. Another series of knocks thundered through her veins. "Yo, Ramsey!" Martinez called through the door. The pulse between her ears beat in sync with her footsteps as she approached. She unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door a crack. "What?" He scowled. "What do you mean, what? Why aren't you at the bar celebrating? We've been calling you all night." "I know." "Damn!" He covered his nose as the stench from her apartment hit him. "What the hell died in there?" "It's best to breathe through your mouth." She stepped into the hallway and closed the door, feigning a smile. The rat poison my super put down. They're dying in the walls. Add to that, I haven't been home much lately, so everything in the fridge is, well, there's some Chinese in there that... All right. But are you good? Do you need to talk or whatever? She cringed. I don't need to talk. I know this is a big one for you. You got the fuckers. Martinez held up a fist and bit his lower lip. This one meant a lot. Your life's work or whatever. I thought you'd be celebrating with all of us, but after the raid you were gone. I figured I'd stop in to make sure. I'm fine. Sylvia rolled her eyes. Look. She held up her hand, fingers still wrapped around the handle of the paintbrush. I thought I'd be celebrating this moment too, but I just need some quiet for a minute. I need to process. She waved the brush. Therapist orders. Feel me? Martinez nodded and placed a hand on her shoulder. Yeah, okay, but what? You want to talk feelings? Come in and help me bust open some walls looking for dead rats? Have some Chinese? I think there's some hairy lo mein in one of those boxes. You're nasty. He pointed a finger at her face. But we love you anyway. Okay, Ramsey. You do what you gotta do tonight. Tomorrow, though, you, me, and Burke are getting drinks. Okay. Promise? Get the fuck out, Martinez. She smiled. After Martinez left through the elevator, Sylvia re-entered the apartment. The odor assaulted her senses on re-entry. Standing in the dining area, which she converted into an art studio, Sylvia faced the small kitchenette. On the floor where she'd left him, wrapped in a blue tarp, lay the body of Victor Cambridge. She pulled back a corner of the tarp to expose his face. Pale, eyes open, slack jaw, the acrid odor of death plumed. She turned away, holding her breath. He was a young guy, maybe in his late 20s. Peeling back the tarp further revealed thin shoulders and the rest of his shirtless torso. Congealed blood had pooled in his gaping abdominal cavity. Immediately after the raid, Sylvia didn't feel the much-anticipated relief she'd been expecting after all these years. Her team took down an entire syndicate of child traffickers in one sweep. They got the head of the organization in handcuffs. But as he was carefully guided into the back seat of a cruiser, a sorrow filled Sylvia's heart. Sorrow that it wasn't the man who took her sister. That there were others, just like this dead guy on her kitchen floor, who acted as lures. Every foul piece of shit whoever stole his child was still out there. Tangerine, sunset, bled out of her brain and into her heart, filling it with rage. It pumped into her veins, pulsing through her entire body, feeding every organ and every muscle until she was so full of fury she wanted to cut it out of herself. The orange rage had propelled her to the last known residence of one of the men. Victor wasn't in the building during the raid, and he was too low on the totem pole to go after without risking the big picture win. All guns needed to be on the main location, but as soon as it was complete, she needed to get Victor too. She needed all of them, every last one wiped away, blank like the canvas. The moment was a blur, a splotchy nightmare. Without telling anyone where she was heading, she had apprehended Victor at home. The scrawny guy was in his underwear, scratching his head as he opened the door. After tackling him to the cement floor of his apartment, the memory went hazy. He pulled a knife from somewhere, and she fought it from him. During the tussle, she must have slashed into his belly. Glimpses of a memory flashed in her mind. The knife repeatedly sank into his gut, gouging, carving, until her arms were tired. His desperate eyes pleaded with her to stop, but she couldn't. Tangerine skies were blotted out completely by the fiery clouds in her head. As she spewed the madness from her body, the clouds rained red until she couldn't see the traces of orange any longer. In a daze, she had stuffed him in an oversized rolling duffel and lugged him to her vehicle. Now he lay covered by a tarp in her kitchen, decomposing until she could process how she'd gotten here. Dreams of violence and righteous vengeance had come to her in the past, but she'd never thought they'd ever manifest as more than wishful thinking. She stared at the canvas, desperately seeking guidance. Sylvia grabbed a large tube of acrylic lemon yellow and pressed it directly to the canvas, squeezing a small splotch onto the surface where a sun would soon be painted. A sunset, she whispered. Release it. She smeared the streak of paint with a brush, pressing it into the white backdrop. Her peripheral vision couldn't ignore the blue tarp in her kitchen. Toes poking out of the end, eyes brimming with tears, she turned to face him. He'd taken so much from her, from others. She launched toward him, swinging her foot into his ribs. Bones snapped under the assault. She kicked him again and again until his ribs collapsed. In her fury, she'd squeezed her tube of paint so hard that the lemon yellow seeped out and landed onto his body. A ropey yellow glob atop his bloody insides. Mangled intestines and clotted blood beneath. The fiery red insides bled through the yellow. Sylvia's fist remained clenched, squeezing out long ropes of paint which fell into his body cavity. Tears dripped into his open abdomen, mixing with paint and bile and blood and organ. She admired the colors, yellow and red. How she loved them on their own. Knees buckled and she dropped. Arms held high above her head with the paintbrush in hand, she plunged it into his gut, stabbing, screaming, hoping the anger might take away the pain. But all she got was a mixture of yellow and the blood of a monster swirling into the perfect shade of orange. She stirred, hypnotized by the dance of colors, the fluidity of movement, and the catharsis of justice. With her palate restored, she smeared the paint blood mix onto the canvas. Varying shades from blood red orange to bright yellow. A fading skyscape of color created a replica of the backdrop which devoured her sister. The hours ticked by, and Sylvia Ramsay finished her painting. She sat in the corner, body smeared with yellows, black, red, and orange. It clung to her clothes, her fingers. The image lived outside of her mind. On the canvas, a silhouette of a spinning girl, forever joyful in that moment before the terrible thing, forever dancing against a tangerine sky. Thank you everybody for listening to my story. It's called Tangerine Sky, and it is in Impulses of a Necrotic Heart.